All right, we're about to break down a threat that's silently waiting in pretty much every home. And yeah, that includes yours. We're going to look at one local company's game plan to uncover the universal rules for fighting and winning against an enemy you might not even see coming. Let's jump right in. So take a second and really think about that. What comes to mind? Fire, maybe? A big storm? Something else?
Well, the real answer is actually way more common and honestly a lot more sneaky.
That's right. Water. It's kind of the unseen villain working quietly behind your walls and right under your floors. Now, to really get a handle on this threat, we're going to zoom in on one particular community, Oak Ridge, Florida. It turns out it's the perfect case study for how the environment itself can create a constant battle against water. So what's really fascinating here is how all these different factors pile on top of each other. I mean, you've got this super humid climate that's just a perfect breeding ground for problems. Then add more than 50 inches of rainy air, crazy thunderstorms, a high water table, which means groundwater is always close to the surface, and, oh yeah, old pipes just waiting to fail. It's like a war on multiple fronts. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The environment itself is like pouring gasoline on the fire. That humidity means that once water gets inside, the damage doesn't just start, it explodes. Time is absolutely not on your side here. Which brings us to a really crucial point. The clock starts ticking the very second that water shows up. So let's take a look at what actually happens in that critical first window of time. This is the number. If you remember anything, remember this: 48 hours. Because after this point, you're not just fighting water anymore, you're fighting what's basically a biological invasion. Let's break this down, okay? In the first hour, water is just finding its way into everything. Then, over the next day, things like your drywall and the wood in your house get totally saturated. But the real game changer happens between 24 and 48 hours. That's when mold and bacteria start to set up shop. And after that, well, you're looking at actual structural damage. A simple leak just turned into a massive deconstruction project. So, with a clock ticking that fast, how in the world do you fight back? Well, the answer isn't a few mops and buckets. It's a full-on scientific counterattack. Let's look at the professional blueprint for how this is done. Okay, first thing you have to understand is a key term: mitigation. This is step one. Think of it like the emergency response. It's not about fixing the damage yet. It's about stopping the bleeding, finding the source and getting all that excess water out of there. Then, after mitigation, you have restoration. This is the rebuild phase. This is the process of actually repairing and replacing everything that was damaged to get your home back to exactly how it was before the whole mess started. They're two totally different but equally critical stages. And this whole thing follows a really strict, methodical process. It kicks off with massive water extraction, then it moves to structural drying, which, believe me, is way more complicated than just pointing a fan at a wall. After that comes cleaning and sanitization to deal with the microbial threat, and finally, the full restoration and rebuild. You know, professionals win this fight because they can literally see the invisible. They aren't just guessing if a wall is dry. Nope, they're using these huge truck-mounted extractors that can pull out hundreds of gallons of water an hour, thermal cameras to see moisture trapped deep inside walls, and special moisture meters to get exact readings. It's basically technology versus nature. All right, now this is where things get even more interesting. The entire response we just talked about, it can change, like, dramatically based on one single factor: the kind of water you're dealing with. So professionals classify water into different categories. You have Category 1, which is clean water. That comes from something like a burst supply line from your sink. It's not immediately dangerous. But then you have Category 3, or black water, and that's a completely different beast. It comes from a sewage backup or a flood, and it is a serious health hazard, just packed with dangerous pathogens. And here's the bottom line: you just can't treat a sewage backup the same way you treat a sink overflow. It's not possible. With black water, a lot of materials that could have been saved from clean water have to be completely removed and thrown out as hazardous waste. Getting the water type wrong isn't just a mistake, it's actually dangerous. Okay, so we've been deep in the weeds talking about a town in Florida, but why does any of this actually matter to you, no matter where you happen to live? Because think about it, every single home has plumbing. Every home exists in some kind of climate. The specific threats might look a little different, sure, but the fundamental principles of how water attacks and how you have to defend against it are exactly the same. Oak Ridge is just a magnified example of a fight that's happening everywhere all the time. So, what are the big takeaways here? First, speed is everything. That 48-hour clock is not a suggestion, it's a deadline. Second, you can't fight what you can't see. Professionals use science and tech to find that hidden moisture that your fans are definitely going to miss. And third, go check your homeowner's insurance policy like right now. Sudden and accidental damage is often covered. The whole point is to understand your risks before you're standing in the middle of a crisis. Look, every pipe, every roof tile, every appliance in your home is a potential front line in this ongoing battle with water. The real question isn't if a breach is going to happen, but when. And now that you know all this, are you prepared to win?